Thank you, Brett. 8:37 is the time here on local radio. We're gearing things up, and I'm very excited and humbled to be in this position. We are kicking off an anniversary September, 75 years for WMOA in the Mid-Ohio Valley. We'll have former employees and just various alum across the years to be able to bridge the gap and tell you the story of where we started and how we got here. And we are really excited for our first guest to be a part of that. Even though he's in a different state, we are still, and he is still part of the WMOA family. So we're fortunate to be with him. The man I'm talking about is Mike McNamara. A lot of you will recognize that name, whether it's WMOA or his stint with TV as well. So I'll start things off and say, good morning, sir. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, Jacob. I'm flattered that the folks asked and that so many have remembered, for better or worse.
Oh, no, absolutely. And there's no mistake on why they would remember. And with that, I know the era a little bit. We had talked off air about it being about the mid to late 80s. So I'm just interested, and I'm sure the people are as well, to just talk about the start. How do you get in the radio business? What motivated you to do it? And how did you get in touch to be able to land at WMOA?
As they would say, to begin at the beginning, now I sound like Ted Knight, and Ed Asner just recently passed away, and I still remember that show. But I started at a 1,000-watt radio station on the island of Crete. So I was with Armed Forces Radio and TV after I graduated from high school, and that really put me on the path to broadcasting, because when I got out and went to Ohio University and internship at WHIZ in Zanesville, and those folks I still be in contact with. And then and then Lexington, Kentucky, I guess. I almost forgot that. Then we had, for various family circumstances, my wife was from the Caldwell, Marietta area, so we returned to Caldwell. I'm thinking it was early 80s, and Big John, I'm not sure how we met or crossed paths, but he gave me an opportunity to do some broadcasting. And so my first game that I can remember, not with Big John, was either a gentleman named Bert Goddard or Ed Urjevec, and they were two former employees at WMOA, and we did Marietta College basketball. Now, no offense, and I follow Pioneer Sports still, and they're doing very, very well. They were struggling back when I was doing Marietta College basketball. I still remember the coach, too, George Friedersizer. But make a long story short, John came up to me and said, "You've done these before, haven't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I've done a few," because I think he wasn't familiar with my Armed Forces background, or certainly Lexington, Kentucky, which included being a sports guy, if you will, for the University of Kentucky and their wonderful basketball team. But that's the closest I've ever come to how Coach Don Shelley ran his Pioneers, was UK basketball.
And with that, I think that's a perfect segue into Mr. Shelley. Can you kind of just talk about, witnessing that and being a part of that? Because, as you know, being a broadcaster is such a key part of the game, and to at least witness or be a part of the greatness that you saw. Can you kind of touch on that side of just, you see the Pioneers now? What was it like, even though they're still a great baseball team? How was it different, and what are some stories that come to mind when you think of Mr. Shelley?
Oh, I can remember that. I can still see the whole Shelley family with Jim, and John's been very successful in Ashland, Jim, the umpire, and Joe over at, I believe it's at Teal in Pennsylvania, and my friend Jeff. I should have checked in with Jeff. He's kind of a natural historian for baseball and the surrounding and fraternity, Coach Shelley would call it. But that's when I knew that was something special, when I first started doing Marietta baseball. And I remember Big John saying, they're a team that's never out of it. And we were down, one of my first games, down by like 9 heading into the 7th inning on a 7-inning game. And like most people, or even me at that time, would write that off. I think we ended up winning by 10-9 or some ridiculous figure like that. So that's when I became a true believer, was beating Otterbein by a run, in that last inning, scoring like 7 or 8 or 9 runs to win it. So, but he ran, and everything was perfect. The pinstripes, the field. I wonder what he would think, and I would love to see it now, the new facility under Coach Brewer.
And it's unbelievable. And I think that is a great question. And with that, Coach Brewer, you kind of come full circle with that. Talk a little bit about your relationship with the coach.
He might not admit this, but at one time I also did some SID, Sports Information Director's work at Marietta College. And he was one of my work study students, Coach Brewer. So I always like to kid him that he got his start. And, of course, he played under Coach Shelley at the time. And but he did work study with me, and the work study students, it helped pay the tuition, etc. He would help with the stats during football games, anything that was off season, because it was difficult for any baseball players who were work study students to do much during the baseball season, because Coach Shelley, and of course, given the season, it made it difficult to do much besides classroom and athletics.
I can imagine. And with that, before we go to a commercial break, with all of the color commentary that you've done, there's just got to be some crazy locations or some crazy road trips taken with Big John. I've heard, quite a bit of stories that we might not be able to tell on air, but with him and the character that he was, what was some odd situations that you guys were put in, or something that comes to mind?
One of my favorites, and several people reminded me of stories, and I think it was you or Ben Marshall when they sent me the email, and again, flattered to be part of the 75th celebration, which is another thing about multi-platforms today. But we were on the road at John Carroll, and they just built a new press box for baseball. Nothing like the press box at Marietta, including the Kent Tekulpe Media building. But we got up there, and John was always good about checking for phone lines and ordering them and everything. So we get up to John Carroll to do a doubleheader, and there's no phone line in the booth. And it's like, well, we were always – I don't think we were ever late. And Kyle Wenzel will attest to that, But the point being is, what do we do with 20 minutes to get on the air for pregame and no phone line? And that was before cell phones.
Right.
John goes to the trunk, or he sends me out to the car to go look in his trunk, and he says, "Bring me that reel of wire." And I went, "Reel of wire?" I said, "Okay." So I go, and there's literally a reel like you would expect to see at a GTE truck or something, a phone company truck.
Of course.
And there's a reel of phone line, and I don't know how much was there. And to put it in perspective, once we hooked it up at our end in the booth, we ran it to the closest dorm to hook up to one of the students' phones to get us on the air. And I bet in Marietta terms, it would have ran halfway down Harmer Hill. That's right. How long that we got onto somebody's student's phone in a dorm to get us on the air. And the gentleman who helped, bless his soul, and may he rest in peace, was the SID, Chris Winsler. Chris died about a year ago this time, and if anybody's familiar with SID work, like Jeff Shelley, of course, and and Kevin Ruppel at Baltimore, I could go on and on with those folks. Just do yeoman's work for student athletes, especially on the Division III level. So Chris got us on the air that day, and so did that reel, which I'm assuming. I bet Chris Wharff might still have it in his trunk.
I was about to say, that's one of those stories to where, depending on what side I get, one sounds exactly like something Chris would do, and then one sounds something exactly like Johnny would do. They definitely take some of the great parts of the gentleman that I love to hear about. And
neither one of them. Yeah, neither one of them fell far from the tree.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We got to go to a break right now. Mike McNamara on Talk of the Town. Morrison Incorporated and Baker Jewelers are bringing you this exclusive interview to celebrate our 75th anniversary. We still have a lot of stories to tell and a lot of memories to talk about. Don't go anywhere. You're on WMOA. 8:47 the time here on Talk of the Town. Thanks again to Morrison Incorporated and Baker Jewelers. It is the 75th anniversary celebration for WMOA. All month, to give you a little bit of background, we will be talking to various WMOA alum, former employees, just to give you some great untold stories and some told memories from over the years to show you how we started and to explain how we got here in the 75th year here in September. Mike McNamara, former color commentator, and I'm sure he wore various hats here at the station, has been joining us, and we'll be talking until 9 a.m. So, Mike, I do want to touch on that. I know you did some color commentary, but as you know, in the broadcasting business, there's many hats that you have to wear. What are some stories that you think about to where you kind of went past, the Call of Duty and did something that you might not have been comfortable with, but you landed on your feet?
The one I'll never forget this. I was doing an internship, I think at the time, just up the road in Cambridge, Ohio. And believe it or not, they had a funeral home that was opening, and the owner suggested and sold a broadcast for an open house at a funeral home, and yours truly was the guy that did it. Now, you talk about, do I dare say, dead air?
Oh, my goodness, right.
It was a long hour for yours truly. Of course, the good news is I was still a kid and just back recently, and from overseas and everything like that, I believe, if I remember the timeline. But I've never forgot that and said I would never do that again.
No, I don't blame you, and I'm sure that was one heck of an experience for the people there. And over the years, there was just various things that happened and changed. I'm not sure the last time that you visited us here, but kind of speak to what you see now. What are you just surprised about with the evolution? Maybe some things that stayed the same, but things that you're like, man, if these guys that are in the radio business now knew what I had to go through, what would those be?
Oh, I was thinking when you were kind enough to invite me for the 75th anniversary that I said, was just WMOA AM. And now with all the multi-platforms plus the websites and I can't remember. Do you remember the date when Jaws went on the air, the FM?
I do, actually. Oddly enough, April 1st of 2020, we always joke and say if it went bad, then we would have said it's an April Fool's joke and pulled it out.
That's funny because, I don't remember, obviously, Jaws, but I got a kick out of that's the thing with multi-platforms. And I've been in contact with people because of Facebook and some other things that, I never thought I'd get used to, and I'm still not very knowledgeable overall. But to hear back from friends over those years, and even Chris, I think, posted business cards with he and Ty Moore with Jaws and the broadcasts that they do. And I sent him back something like, you're going to need a bigger booth or something like that.
Right.
Just keeping in touch with, I remember doing ball games when Ty Moore was the quarterback at Caldwell. So that's also how far I go back locally. Commissioner Moore, if you will.
Right, and that's great to see that come full circle, and I think that leads into what I was wondering as well. You talked and alluded to some of the list of characters that we have, kind of set the scene over the years of the coworkers that you had and the various employees that might have been there and shifted that come to mind, and you say, I'm glad that I was able to work with that person.
Oh, obviously I have to start with Big John Wharff. Was really a pleasure. And, of course, Carol, and I want to make sure I say hello to her because I think deep down she won't admit it, but she pretty much ran everything. and then Johnny and the another Carol, I used to always say, and Chris and his lovely family. And it's just been, you talk about it. You just don't see many things like WMOA radio anymore, quite honestly, today with all the, I don't even know what the term is for the larger groups and versus locally owned and operated.
The syndicated stations?
Yeah, there you go, and group ownership. So I salute them, especially on 75 years. That's remarkable, and they've touched a lot of lives. And then, of course, with broadcasting, I mentioned right at the beginning, Ed Urjevic, EJ, and Bert Goddard, who was an umpire. And talk about Big John. Let me get back to Big John and some of his friendships, because he never met a stranger. I mean, seriously, never met a stranger. And a couple things that would come to mind when we'd have a break, and I'd pick it up coming back from the break from Kyle in the studio, and then I'd introduce or re-intro John, and I still can hear him to this day going, "Thank you, Michael." It's kind of an emphasis on Michael, and I can still hear that to this day. Another thing that comes to my mind with thinking about Big John is that if we were really out in front by somebody, one of my favorite lines, and I think Johnny has used that as a promo, Big John would go, "Folks, it's batting practice." And I can still hear him saying that. And then one other story that one of the students, Todd Kelly, prompted me to ask if I was going to mention there was a kid named Billy Porterfield, and he played for Ohio Northern, and he was a brute. And I believe it was an OAC tournament game, but it was at Pioneer Park, and he had already hit 3 home runs that day.
Wow.
And so John and I were bantering back and forth as he got ready to face the Marietta pitcher. Do you think they'll pitch to him? Well, of course, they did. And, of course, Porterfield just rocked one to, I think it was right center field. It's funny, I can almost see that. And if you could have seen in the booth Big John's eye roll and throwing his pen down on the scorebook like, "I told you." He didn't say it, but he was thinking, "I told you they should have put him on," Right. But I mean, as it turned out, I can't remember the final, but if we had lost, we still came back and won the championship game and another OAC title, which you look at Coach Shelley's record, and it's just unbelievable with OACs. And, of course, Coach Brewer hasn't missed many beats with that, and, a couple World Series championships since then, too. So I was proud to be a part of MOA and proud to be a part of Marietta College.
As you should be. And as mentioned, Brewer has done an unbelievable job. Big shoes to fill, but they're getting pretty snug with how he's been able to carry that torch from Mr. Shelley. And hearing about the last 5 minutes or so, I love the great stories about the on-air guys, but kind of touch on some funniness maybe with you and Big John, and maybe with Kyle in particular of, maybe people that don't know that are listening. There's some jokes that are made and some various things said off air. Was there any times, you guys maybe made a prank on a guy or vice versa? Talk a little more about that.
Oh, I'm sure there are. I was trying to think of different stories, and the one about the players, too. I still remember one of my favorite lineups with Marietta was McCarroll, McCullough, and McConnell. And inevitably, whether Coach Shelley did that on purpose, he put them all back to back like 3, 4, and 5 in the lineup. So John had turned it over to Mike McNamara, and I'd introduce McCarroll, McCullough, and McConnell coming leading off the inning or something like that. But a lot of times, especially between games, we were really hurried for time and getting the lineups and things of that nature. And so we generally would throw it back to the studio and Kyle for some time. But then all of a sudden you'd look down and we were still working on our lineups and they were ready to throw the pitch. John would pick up the headsets to go, "I want to go live. I want to go live right now." And I can still remember that. And then you hear Kyle going, 3, 2, 1. And he got us on and back there in a hurry. So those are some of the things. I remember the email I got from either you or Ben Marshall saying, "Keep them family friendly." And that's what I'll try to do. But one other story from Battle Creek was the sports editor at the Marietta Times, Randy Benson. And I saw where he recently retired, too. And I think he's here in Indiana because that's where I'm located now, between South Bend, Notre Dame, and Toledo. I'm up in northeast Indiana. Anyway, we just pulled into a Holiday Inn at Battle Creek where we're going to stay for the tournament. And we go back to check in our rooms, and they had a pool. And you got to remember, this is like mid-May, end of May. And Randy Benson, as we called him, comes running out of his room in a black Speedo. And I'm trying, I still can see that. And
sure.
I'm saying to myself, why did I bring up that story?
Right.
But I think it was Todd Kelly, one of the student helpers who always did promos for us, too, on the PA.
Right.
Said, "Are you going to tell them the Randy Benson story?" I said, "Probably not, but I just did." So there we go.
No, and we love them, and all of these great stories have just been fantastic, and I'm just humbled and honored to be able to speak with just a broadcasting pro and a legend like yourself here in the Mid-Ohio Valley and beyond. And Mr. McNamara, hearing about the last 2.5 minutes, a lot of great stories, but, it's your show. how do you want to end it, and maybe a story, not to put you on the spot, that you think should be told, or just an overall overview of your time at WMOA and just what it means to you to still be part of the radio family?
Well, again, I started with I'm really pleased and flattered that WMOA asked me to be part of that celebration. I still can't believe it's been 75 years, and you've come a long way. I mean, WMOA's come a long way from just the AM radio. It all started at an AM radio station, but with all the platforms, and to be saluted on 75th anniversary, I'm very proud to be part of that history, and also best wishes to all the Wharff family and so many, I almost said viewers. Well, they can be with all the platforms today too.
That's how much it's changed.
All the listeners that have participated, or still, it's nice to hear from, including there's my buddy Britt. They now have children. Some of the players from Marietta that still check in, they now have children. I'm going, you're not old enough to have kids, and yet I have a 16-year-old grandson, so where did that go, Right. Now I'm kind of like John when I was working with him, but it's been a great ride, and I thank everybody for checking in, and again, I'm very proud to be a part of it, and wish everybody in Marietta, Parkersburg, the Mid-Ohio Valley, if you will, another 75 years of service.
I couldn't have said it better myself, sir. And once again, just humbled and honored to be able to speak with you today. Great conversation. And for the people that might just be tuning in, Mike McNamara was able to speak with us and help us celebrate the 75th anniversary month here in September. He kicked off, a great conversation, but as well, a great start to our celebration this month. 15th is the official day, but we'll kind of lead up, and then we'll go down the road of WMOA. I hope everyone enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Once again, that was Mike McNamara here on WMOA. Thank you, sir, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. You guys take care.
We will, and we will send things right now to ABC News. You're on WMOA Local Radio here in Marietta.